Hi, I'm Andrew Carr. I'm an editor at Dutton, and one of the many authors I have the great fortune to work with is Malinda Lo. So I'm going to read a little bit from her forthcoming novel, Last Night at the Telegraph Club. This book comes out in January of 2021, but we've been hard at work on it for a couple of years now, and I wouldn't miss a chance to share a bit of it with you. A little bit of background: this novel is set in San Francisco Chinatown in the mid-1950s. The main character is a 17-year-old girl named Lily Hu, and in the scene I'm going to read, she has snuck out with her friend Kath to go with fake IDs to go to a small lesbian nightclub in a nearby neighborhood, and the club is called Telegraph Club. Anyway, this is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda Lo. The voice that emerged was pitched low and husky like a jazz singer with smoke on her breath. A faint gasp went through the audience, as if people were surprised, but Lily knew it wasn't surprise. It was acknowledgement of how immaculate the male impersonation was, how shockingly well staged. The contrast between Tommy's voice, especially when it rose smoothly to the higher notes, and silhouette, legs spread and shoulders cocked, was deliciously scandalous. Lily felt her heartbeat thrumming in her chest as she watched. She was afraid to blink. She was afraid to miss the moment she sensed coming closer. And finally there it was. At the end of the first verse, Tommy spun around with a cocky smile on her face, and the audience burst into applause so loud it drowned out the rest of the verse. The black and white photograph in the San Francisco Chronicle had been a poor imitation of reality, smudged and blurry. It had left out all the details, all the important details: the sheen of pomade on the waves of Tommy's hair, the precise folds of her black bow tie, the gold signet ring on her pinky finger as she cupped the microphone close to her mouth. It had given no sense, Lily now realized, of Tommy's physicality. The way she stood, the way she moved, her swagger, so like a man, and yet. It was that yet that made Lily's skin flush warm. The knowledge that despite the clothes that Tommy wore, despite the attitude that invited everyone in the room to gaze at her, she was not a man. It felt unspeakably charged, as if all of Lily's most secret desires had been laid bare on stage. Tommy didn't change the lyrics. The song was languid and liquid, with a hint of jaded self-reproach, as if Tommy were confessing that she had fallen in love against her wishes. Hearing her sing to an unnamed hymn while dressed as a man was a sensation. The audience whistled at her, and she winked at them, so sure of herself it made Lily's face burn. She didn't want Tommy ever to stop. She could stand there in the hot crowd, craning her neck to see around the heads of those who'd been lucky enough to get a table, gazing at Tommy in her tuxedo forever. She had heard the song before, of course, but never like this, never the way Tommy sang, with a purr in her voice that felt like she was whispering directly in Lily's ear. Lily's blouse clung to her damp skin, and she became increasingly aware of the press of people around her and the heat that rose from their bodies. The air was close and smelled more strongly than ever of cigarette smoke and alcohol, and the undercurrent of perfume now seemed shockingly intimate, as if she were nuzzling the necks of all the women there. And all of a sudden, it was almost painful to watch Tommy on stage. She had to look away as if she were a drowning person surfacing for air. She saw that there were some men in the audience, husbands with their wives or girlfriends, seated in a clump on one side of the room, as if they'd huddled together for safety. The men seemed to be having a good time, applauding and grinning, giving each other approving glances, as if to congratulate themselves on their adventurousness. The wives and girlfriends were more mixed in their expressions. One looked absolutely mortified and could barely keep her eyes on the stage. One leaned forward with a broad smile, occasionally giving her husband a smirk. The smirk was so thick with suggestion that it made Lily queasy, even though she didn't understand what it meant. The not knowing made it worse. It opened a Pandora's box of implications, and yet she was painfully aware of her own naivete. She couldn't even imagine what that woman wanted, but she was certain it was shameful. Beyond those couples, most of the audience was women, and some of those women were dressed like men. None as finely as Tommy, but some wore ties and vests, while others wore blazers with open-collared shirts. Some women were done up for a night on the town in cocktail dresses with sparkling earrings and necklaces around their pale throats. There were a few Negro women seated together, but Lily was the only Chinese girl in the room. That meant that there was no one from Chinatown to recognize her, but it also made her stand out all the more. Thank you. Thanks for a chance to read from this book, and I can't wait for people to be able to read all of it in the next 10 months. Thanks.